Riley Morgan was only 9, but her heart already carried a weight far heavier than most could imagine. In a small, cramped apartment in Boston, she and her mother, Melissa, lived in the shadows of their grief. Melissa, a dedicated nurse, worked long shifts, her hands always busy with healing others while her heart ached for the family they had lost. Riley, too young to fully understand the complexities of life, felt the absence of her father every day. His boots, worn from years of hard labor, stood by the door, a silent reminder of the man she would never see again. On a chilly afternoon in late autumn, Riley sat by the window, her small fingers pressed against the glass as she watched the world bustle by. Her mind often wandered, imagining what life would have been like if things were different, if her father were still here. She dreamed of him laughing, of the warmth he brought to their little home, of the way he'd scoop her up in his arms after a long day's work. But those dreams, as sweet as they were, always dissolved with the harsh reality of her empty room. Her mother, working yet again, hadn't been home for hours. The weight of the silence pressed in around Riley, but she didn't mind. She had learned to live with it. After all, silence was all she had left of her father. It was then that Riley noticed him. An elderly man sat hunched beneath the overpass just down the street. His clothes were ragged, his shoes worn down to the soles. Riley felt a pang in her chest, something deep and instinctive that made her feet move before she could stop them. She grabbed the boots, those boots that had belonged to her father. They were one of the few things her mother had held onto from that tragic day, these boots, her father's last legacy. With the boots clutched in her arms, Riley stepped outside. The cold air bit at her skin, but she didn't care. As she neared the old man, she could see the deep lines etched into his face, the exhaustion in his eyes. His hands trembled as he held a coffee cup, staring at the ground. Riley hesitated for only a moment, but her heart told her what to do. She knelt before him, her small hands extending the boots. "Sir," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of her emotions, "I have these, my dad's boots. I think you need them more than I do." The man looked up, his eyes narrowing in surprise. He took the boots from her, his hands brushing against hers for just a moment. There was something about the way he held them, like they were more than just worn-out shoes. They were a gift, a piece of someone's past that had been given a second chance. "Thank you, little one," he said in a voice that was rough with emotion. Riley smiled, her heart swelling with a strange mix of pride and sadness. She hadn't expected anything in return. It was enough just to know she had done something good, something kind. She stood up and turned to leave, but before she could take a step, the man called out to her. "Wait, little one," he said, his voice much warmer now. "What's your name?" "Riley," she answered, turning back. "Riley," he repeated, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Your heart is pure. Don't let the world take that away from you." Riley didn't understand what he meant, but she nodded, taking in the gravity of his words as she walked back home. She didn't know it then, but her life was about to change in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. The kindness she had shown to a stranger, to a man who was more than just a man, had set something in motion, a ripple that would touch lives far beyond her own. Back in the warmth of their apartment, Riley stood before her mother's photograph. She smiled softly, her small hands clutching the worn boots. The world outside was cold and uncertain, but in this moment, she felt something warm and hopeful stir deep within her heart. It was the same feeling her father's boots had always given her, the same feeling she had when her mother held her close at night. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was different now. Something had changed, just a little bit. And little did Riley know, that single act of kindness, so small and unassuming, would set the stage for a journey none of them could have predicted. The next few days passed in a blur for Riley and her mother. Melissa worked long hours at the hospital, and Riley found solace in her usual routines, drawing pictures of her father, playing with her toys, and gazing out the window at the busy world below. But she couldn't stop thinking about the old man. His weathered face, the way he had looked at her when she handed him her father's boots, lingered in her mind. Riley wasn't the kind of girl to dwell on things for too long, but there was something about that moment that felt significant. She had done something kind for a stranger, and the way he had spoken to her, almost like she had done something extraordinary, stuck with her. She wondered if the boots had made any difference in his life. Maybe they would keep him warm, keep him safe. But what Riley didn't know was that the man she had helped wasn't just some elderly man. He wasn't a beggar or a random stranger at all. His name was Ethan Blackwood, and he wasn't a man without a home. He was the CEO of Blackwood Technologies, one of the wealthiest, most influential men in the world. Ethan's decision to spend a week living on the streets was part of a very different kind of experiment. Having inherited his father's company years ago, Ethan had become a powerful figure, detached from the ordinary lives of people. He surrounded himself with luxury, constantly operating in the upper echelons of society. But over time, he began to feel an emptiness that no amount of wealth or success could fill. He had lost touch with the real world, with the struggles of everyday people. That's when he decided to step into their shoes, literally. Disguising himself as a homeless man, he set out to experience life from the other side. He wasn't expecting much, just an opportunity to understand what it felt like to live without privilege. But then Riley came along. Her kindness, her selflessness, touched him in a way he hadn't felt in years. There was something pure in her act, something that reminded him of his late wife, Jessica. Jessica had been everything to him: warm, compassionate, and endlessly generous. She had always believed in helping children from single-parent households, something Ethan had promised to support after her death. But over the years, that promise had faded into the background of his busy life, overshadowed by his work and his wealth. When Riley offered him the boots, it stirred something inside of him. She was so young, so innocent, yet so deeply empathetic. It was as if she had inherited Jessica's vision, a vision Ethan had let slip away. After that brief encounter, Ethan knew he had to do something. Riley and her mother, Melissa, needed help. He couldn't just walk away after such an emotional moment. His own wealth and position meant little now. What mattered was what he could give to them, how he could make a difference. But he also knew he couldn't do this openly, not yet. His involvement had to be subtle, unspoken. So, Ethan began to orchestrate the most discreet way of helping them. He reached out to an old friend who ran Westbrook Academy, one of the most prestigious schools in the area, and arranged for a scholarship to be offered to Riley. It would cover tuition, supplies, everything. It would give her the chance she deserved, a chance to rise above the circumstances she had been born into. At the same time, he spoke to a trusted contact at the hospital where Melissa worked and made arrangements for her to be considered for a promotion. It wasn't much, but it was a step, a way to show them that they were worthy of support, worthy of something better than the struggles they faced every day. While all of this unfolded behind the scenes, Riley and Melissa went on with their lives, unaware that help was on the way. For Riley, the world seemed unchanged. School was still difficult, and the other kids still didn't quite understand her. But she held on to the feeling she had after meeting the old man, a warmth that kept her going. She kept those boots close to her heart, the boots that connected her to her father, to the man who had been so kind to her. She didn't know what had become of him, but she hoped that wherever he was warm, safe. As for Melissa, the weight of being a single mother wore heavy on her. She had long ago given up on thinking about her own dreams. Her world was consumed by caring for Riley, paying the bills, and trying to find time to rest between shifts at the hospital. Still, she never complained. She had learned to carry her burdens quietly, believing that as long as she could provide for Riley, she was doing enough. But a small spark of hope began to glow inside Melissa when, one day, a letter arrived. It was from Westbrook Academy, offering Riley a full scholarship. The letter also included a note that was almost as surprising, a job offer, a promotion, for Melissa. It was a chance, a real chance, to change the trajectory of their lives. Riley's eyes widened when she saw the letter in her mother's hands. "Mom, does this mean?" she asked, her voice full of disbelief. Melissa smiled, though her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "It means you've got a future, sweetheart," she whispered, "and we've got a chance." But even as she held the letter in her hands, a sense of unease stirred in Melissa's chest. Nothing good ever came without strings attached, did it? There had to be more to this, more than just luck or chance. The days that followed were a blur of mixed emotions for Melissa. She was both excited and confused. The scholarship for Riley felt like a dream come true, a rare opportunity that could change everything for her daughter. But the job promotion? The letter had come out of nowhere, and the timing felt too perfect to be coincidence. Who was behind it? What did they want in return? Melissa couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than met the eye. At the same time, Riley's life was changing too. She couldn't stop talking about the new school, imagining all the friends she might make and the subjects she would study. It was as if the scholarship had breathed new life into her. She was determined to prove she deserved it, to make the most of this unexpected gift. But at night, when the world grew quiet, Riley still thought about the old man. Where had he gone? Had the boots kept him warm? Had he found what he needed? It bothered her, but she didn't speak of it to anyone. Melissa decided to visit the hospital director the next day. She needed answers. The promotion felt too good to be true, and she couldn't accept something so life-changing without understanding the motive behind it. As she sat in the director's office, waiting for the conversation to unfold, she couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed by the sudden wave of kindness that had come their way. She had been working at the hospital for years, never expecting anything more than long shifts and the occasional thank you. "Melissa, I know this may seem sudden," the director began, his voice warm but cautious, "but there's someone who's been following your work closely. They were impressed by your dedication, your compassion. They think you're more than ready for this promotion." Melissa's stomach churned. "Who?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The director hesitated, then spoke the name she had never expected to hear in this context. "Ethan Blackwood. He recommended you for this position." The words hit her like a blow to the chest. Ethan Blackwood, the man she had never met, the mysterious figure behind her daughter's scholarship. It all suddenly clicked. It was him. Riley's boots, the man she had helped, and the help that followed, it was all connected to him. She couldn't quite comprehend the full picture. How had he known about her? And why? Was he just trying to be kind, or was there something else? But one thing was clear: this man, this stranger, had taken a deep interest in their lives without ever revealing himself. That evening, as Melissa returned home, the weight of the day pressed heavily on her shoulders. Riley was already at the table, her face glowing with excitement as she talked about the school. "Mom! I can't believe it. I'm going to Westbrook Academy. I'm going to make so many new friends, and I'll finally get to learn so much more than I ever could here. It's going to be amazing." Melissa smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. She was proud of Riley, beyond words. But in the back of her mind, doubts and questions lingered. The scholarship, the promotion, there had to be something she wasn't seeing, something she wasn't understanding. The next day, an unexpected knock on their door interrupted the quiet morning. When Melissa opened it, she was greeted by a lawyer, holding a thick stack of papers. He introduced himself as a representative of Ethan Blackwood. Melissa's heart raced as she took the papers from him, her hands trembling slightly. "What is this?" she asked, her voice tight. The lawyer smiled kindly, though there was an underlying seriousness to his demeanor. "Mr. Blackwood's legal team has been following the progress of your family. He's concerned about Riley's future. He's willing to help in any way he can. These documents outline his assistance to Riley's education and your career. It's all in here." As Melissa skimmed the documents, her heart sank. Along with the scholarship and promotion, there was another surprise: a legal petition for custody of Riley. The lawyer explained that Ethan had personally arranged this petition in the event that anything were to happen to Melissa. He believed that Riley's future should be secured, even if the unexpected occurred. The sudden, unexpected nature of this offer was overwhelming. A part of her felt relief, knowing that Riley would always have support if something happened to her. But another part of her recoiled, the idea of giving up control over her daughter's future stinging her deeply. It felt too much like charity, like Ethan had somehow taken the reins of their lives without them even knowing. Melissa's mind raced, her emotions tangled. She couldn't deny that Ethan's actions had changed their lives, but the more she thought about it, the more she couldn't escape the nagging question: what did he want in return? Why Riley? Why her family? Later that night, as Riley lay in bed, her excitement finally giving way to sleep, Melissa sat quietly, her thoughts consumed with these questions. Her daughter had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. She had no clue about the strings attached to their newfound opportunities. And Melissa wasn't sure if she was ready to reveal the truth just yet. But the truth would come, whether she was ready or not. In time, the pieces of this strange puzzle would fall into place, and Riley would have to face the consequences of her act of kindness. And so would Melissa. But for now, there was only the quiet of their small apartment and the faintest sound of Riley's breath as she slept peacefully, innocent, unaware, and on the cusp of a new life. The days following the legal proceedings were filled with mixed emotions for Melissa. She couldn't shake the feeling of unease gnawing at her. The scholarship, the promotion, the custody petition, it all felt like a dream, but something about it didn't sit right. How could a stranger, Ethan Blackwood, do all this for them? What did he truly want? Riley, on the other hand, was in her element. Westbrook Academy was everything she had hoped for and more. She loved the school, her teachers, and the new friends she was making. Every day, she returned home bubbling with excitement, eager to share her new adventures. She felt seen, like she had finally found a place where she belonged. But Melissa couldn't focus on Riley's joy without the underlying worry. The sudden changes, the unexpected help, and the legal documents, it all felt too orchestrated, too planned. She tried to ignore her growing suspicions, but the questions wouldn't go away. The tipping point came when the first legal hearing was scheduled. Melissa sat in the courtroom, her nerves frayed as the court system scrutinized her every move. They questioned her ability to raise Riley, her financial stability, and her decisions as a single mother. It was overwhelming. She had always carried the burden of motherhood silently, but now, her every choice was being examined under a microscope. As the questioning continued, she felt a deep sense of vulnerability, something she had never allowed herself to experience before. The legal system, the courts, they were all just another reminder of the judgment she had faced her whole life. She had always been strong for Riley, but today, it felt like she was breaking. Then, in the midst of the tension, Riley stood up. "Stop," she cried out, her small voice cutting through the room. "My mom is the best mom. She works so hard for me. You don't know her like I do. She's the only one I need." The room fell silent. Melissa's heart swelled with pride, and tears stung her eyes as she watched her daughter, so small yet so brave, speak up for her. Riley's words were simple, but they carried a weight that could not be ignored. The judge paused, clearly moved by Riley's outburst. "Riley," he said gently, "we understand. We're just trying to ensure your safety." Riley shook her head. "I'm already safe. My mom makes sure of that. She's the best." Melissa's heart ached with love. Her daughter, who had always seemed so innocent, was now her protector. Riley's strength, her unwavering belief in Melissa's ability to care for her, was a gift, one that gave Melissa a renewed sense of purpose. Later that evening, after the hearing, Melissa received a call from Ethan. He wanted to meet her in person. The meeting was set for the following day. Melissa's nerves were on edge as she sat across from Ethan at a small cafe. There was no arrogance in his demeanor, no coldness. Instead, he appeared almost vulnerable. "Thank you for meeting me," Ethan said quietly. "I know everything happening must be overwhelming for you." Melissa folded her arms, still skeptical. "I don't understand. Why are you doing this? Why are you helping us?" Ethan took a deep breath, his eyes distant for a moment. "Because of my wife," he said, his voice faltering. "She passed away a few years ago. She had a dream to help children from single-parent homes, to give them a better future. Riley's act of kindness reminded me of her. I made a promise to her to carry on that dream. I'm just trying to honor it." Melissa listened, her heart heavy with the realization that Ethan's motivations weren't about control or charity. It was about love. Love for his wife, for the dream she had left behind. In that moment, Melissa understood. Ethan wasn't trying to take over their lives. He was fulfilling a promise, helping in a way that honored someone he had lost. She sighed, a sense of relief washing over her. Maybe they weren't as alone as they thought. Maybe there was a way forward, one where their futures weren't controlled by fear or suspicion. But Melissa knew that the journey was far from over. There were still hurdles ahead, battles to be fought. Riley's act of kindness had set things in motion, but their story was far from finished. As she looked at Ethan, she understood one thing: the choices they had made, the risks they had taken, would lead them to something bigger, something more than they could have ever imagined. And together, they would face whatever came next, one step at a time. The days following Melissa's meeting with Ethan were filled with a sense of quiet reflection. She had begun to understand Ethan's motives, but the weight of the changes to their lives was still heavy. While Riley's life seemed to be moving forward, filled with excitement about school and the future, Melissa couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was still unresolved. Ethan had been kind, his intentions genuine, but Melissa felt as if she were walking a fine line. The legal documents he had put in place for Riley's future felt like a safety net, but they also represented a loss of control. She had always taken pride in being able to protect Riley on her own, but now, everything felt uncertain. Could she continue to be the mother Riley needed when so many external forces seemed to be pulling at them? One morning, as Melissa sat with Riley at breakfast, her daughter's excitement about the upcoming school year was palpable. "Mom, guess what? I made a new friend. Her name is Sophie, and she's just like me. We both like the same books and the same foods. I can't wait to see her tomorrow," Riley said, her voice full of joy. Melissa smiled, but there was an underlying sadness she couldn't shake. Riley was thriving, and that was all that mattered. But she couldn't help feeling like her daughter was growing up too quickly, that these changes were pulling them further apart. Riley was becoming the person she was always meant to be, but the woman she needed, Melissa, wasn't sure she knew how to navigate this new world. Later that week, another court hearing was scheduled. This time, the stakes were higher. Melissa's legal team would present their case against Ethan's influence, arguing that the custody petition was an overreach. Melissa had been dreading this moment, but she knew she had no choice. She had to protect Riley from any situation that might feel like an invasion of their privacy, even if Ethan's intentions were ultimately benevolent. The day of the hearing arrived, and the courtroom felt more tense than ever. The walls seemed to close in on Melissa as she sat at the table, her thoughts swirling with confusion and fear. Riley, who had attended every previous hearing, was not there this time. Melissa had made the decision to keep her away from the proceedings, not wanting her daughter to witness any more of the stress. As the hearing began, Melissa's lawyer presented their case, questioning Ethan's motivations and his right to interfere with their family's life. They pointed out that while the scholarship and promotion were acts of kindness, the legal petition for custody felt like an invasion of their autonomy. Melissa's team argued that the intervention was excessive and unnecessary. Ethan, seated across from Melissa, watched silently, his expression unreadable. His presence in the courtroom was imposing, but he didn't speak a word. It was clear that he wasn't there to fight, he was there because he believed in what he was doing. But Melissa's heart remained heavy. The weight of the legal battle, of the scrutiny placed on her ability to raise Riley, was too much to bear. As the arguments continued, something unexpected happened. Riley, despite her absence from the room, appeared. She stood in the doorway, her small frame silhouetted against the bright light from the hallway. For a moment, the entire room went quiet. "I want to say something," Riley said, her voice strong and clear. She stepped into the room, her eyes fixed on Melissa. "I don't need anyone to tell me who can take care of me. My mom is the one who always takes care of me. She's always been there for me. She's all I need." Melissa's heart swelled as she listened to Riley. The courage in her daughter's words was overwhelming, and for a moment, all of Melissa's doubts melted away. Riley didn't need to be protected by a legal system or by someone else's kindness. She was strong, capable, and wise beyond her years. She knew exactly who she was, and she knew who her mother was too. The judge, who had been silent until then, spoke softly. "Riley, you've made yourself very clear. Your words are powerful, and we will take them into account as we make our decision." As Riley left the room, Melissa couldn't stop the tears that welled up in her eyes. Her daughter had spoken with such conviction, with such love. She had reminded Melissa of the bond they shared, a bond that couldn't be broken by legal documents or outside interference. The hearing ended shortly after, with the judge announcing that a decision would be made soon. As Melissa walked out of the courtroom, she felt a sense of clarity wash over her. This wasn't just about Riley's future, it was about their future together. They didn't need anyone's approval to be a family. They didn't need anything other than each other. That evening, as Riley snuggled up beside her on the couch, Melissa took her hand, her heart full of gratitude. "You were so brave today," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from Riley's face. Riley smiled up at her, her eyes full of innocence and wisdom. "I just said what's true, Mom. You're all I need." And in that moment, Melissa knew that no matter what happened, they would always have each other. They had already won, not in the courtroom, but in their hearts. The weeks after the court ruling were quieter, but Melissa couldn't shake the lingering feeling that something still wasn't settled. Riley was thriving at Westbrook Academy, making friends, and growing more independent every day. Melissa was proud of her, but the past few months had left her uneasy. She still hadn't fully understood Ethan's involvement in their lives, despite his good intentions. One afternoon, Riley rushed home from school, eyes sparkling with excitement. "Mom! Guess what? I made the special group for the museum trip tomorrow. Sophie's in my group too." Melissa smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Riley's joy was contagious, and Melissa couldn't help but be grateful for the opportunities that had come her daughter's way. Yet, she couldn't ignore the quiet questions that kept resurfacing about Ethan's role in all of it. A few days later, Melissa received a letter from Ethan, inviting her to meet again. She hesitated but agreed, knowing it was time to have a final conversation with him. They met at the same cafe where they had spoken before. Ethan arrived looking less formal, softer, as if the events had shifted something within him. "I wanted to thank you," Ethan said sincerely. "I know I pushed boundaries. I didn't mean to disrupt your family. I just wanted to honor Jessica's memory and help in a way that mattered." Melissa listened quietly. "I understand why you did it," she replied. "You were honoring a promise to your wife. But we've learned that we don't need saving. We just need each other." Ethan nodded. "I know. And I'm not going to interfere anymore. I'll always be here if you need me, but from the sidelines." His words were exactly what Melissa needed to hear. Ethan's generosity had been driven by love, not control, and now he was respecting their space. "Thank you," Melissa said. "But we don't need anything more." Ethan smiled, relieved. "I respect that." Walking away from their meeting, Melissa felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Ethan had done so much for them, but now it was clear he had respected their boundaries. They could now move forward on their own terms, knowing his help had been out of pure kindness. That evening, Melissa and Riley sat on the couch, the warmth of their bond wrapping them in comfort. Riley had grown so much, and Melissa was filled with pride. Riley had shown more courage than she could ever have imagined, and it had changed everything. "You're so brave," Melissa said, her voice soft. "You've taught me what it means to be strong." Riley grinned. "I'm just happy I could help, Mom. I think Dad would be proud of us." The mention of her late husband brought a tear to Melissa's eye. Riley's act of kindness had kept his legacy alive, carrying forward the values he had taught them both. Later that day, Melissa took Riley's father's boots, the ones Riley had given away to the stranger, and placed them on a shelf in their home. Those boots had started everything, and now they were a symbol of everything they had overcome: loss, love, and the power of one simple act of kindness. As Riley's 10th birthday approached, the boots served as a reminder of their journey. The Shoes of Hope Foundation, inspired by Riley's kindness, was taking shape. Riley's dream to help other children was becoming a reality. On Riley's birthday, as they sat together, the boots proudly displayed on the shelf, Melissa reflected on how far they had come. Riley had grown into a compassionate, strong young girl, ready to take on the world. And Melissa knew that, together, they could face anything that came their way. The future felt bright. The foundation, their bond, and the lessons they had learned from one another would carry them forward. There was so much more ahead, and Melissa was ready for whatever came next, with Riley by her side.